I work in a restaurant, and just a few days ago, I had a guest tell me how great Thailand is and how I have to try the crab stuffed omelets there. Crab stuffed omelets, I thought? That sounds keto. Tell me more. Hi, I'm Mark, and you're watching Keto Crush, your channel for eating healthy, feeling great, and looking hot. In this video, we're making deep fried omelets, yet another way to cook eggs while packing on the fat, proteins, and of course, flavor. But first, if you haven't already, crush that subscribe button so I can keep the keto content coming week after week. And before I get to those omelets, I want to thank you, my audience, for your continued support and positivity through this channel's growth. One of the side effects of going on keto that not a lot of people talk about, but that everyone experiences, is the criticism we get from people not on keto. Keto's a fad diet, they'll say, or all that fat's unhealthy, and you're gonna die of a heart attack. Even celebrities have jumped on the hate train. Most notably a certain famously hot-tempered British chef who enjoys mocking people for finding creative ways to incorporate fat into their diet. And I haven't been spared either. Far from it, in fact. My most popular video, Keto Cauliflower Melt, has been criticized relentlessly for being unhealthy, uninspired, and I quote, disgusting. Those comments sting. But here's the thing everyone on keto must never forget. Keto flips everything we've been told about food upside down. When you share your excitement about the keto diet with people not on keto, inevitably someone will interpret your choice as a criticism of their lifestyle. When I find myself in this situation, I'm reminded of today's political climate and how few arguments are ever won by pitting facts and opinions against one another. So when I'm attacked, rather than engage in that kind of pointless back and forth, I keep my logic simple and personal. I explain that when someone relies on carbs for fuel, fat accumulates in the body, and yes, that buildup can be problematic. I then add that keto offers me a unique opportunity to burn fat for energy rather than store it in the absence of carbs. I finish by mentioning how great I feel and by thanking them for voicing their concern. That's how I cope in person. On the internet, I reread your positive comments, and I take immense pride knowing that my videos are helping much more than they're offending. So, if you've ever left a positive comment, thank you. They're much appreciated. Now, back to those omelets. As you know, a challenge in keto cooking is how to incorporate extra fat into a meal. This regional favorite is essentially a deep fried omelet. By deep frying it, we're infusing the omelet with extra fat, but also creating this beautiful golden crust in the process wrapped around a wonderful filling of your choice. In this video, I used shrimp because that's what I had on hand. In Thailand, lump crab is the preferred stuffing, but honestly, the sky's the limit when it comes to options here. Aside from seafood, I imagine cheese would be pretty fantastic too. After you watch this video, experiment and let me know what you would stuff these omelets with in the comments below. And now without further delay, I present deep fried shrimp stuffed keto omelets. The first step in making these omelets was cooking the shrimp. I chose to steam them, a process that really only takes about 5 minutes once you have that steam rolling. Should you decide to go with lump crab, it always comes pre-cooked, so you'll be able to skip this step entirely. As an alternative, you can also cook these shrimp in butter, seasoned with garlic, parmesan, and sea salt. I opted for steamed because I wanted to see how this dish played out while keeping the recipe as simple as possible. Having tried it, I say go ahead, season and cook those shrimp however you like. And don't stop with shrimp. I want to try this with lobster meat, crawfish, langostinos, or even something as simple as breakfast sausage. Once you've prepped your filling, go ahead and set it aside and get started on your eggs. For this particular recipe, I ended up using 5 large eggs. As you can imagine, this was a filling meal and it sustained me throughout the rest of the day. Honestly, I'd recommend it for 2. Having said that, if you're on keto, don't skimp on the quality of the eggs, especially if they're the star of the show. Whenever possible, I strongly recommend farm fresh eggs, and if you can't get your hands on those, my favorite eggs are Vital Farms organic pasture raised eggs. Look how orange those egg yolks are. Your typical 99 cents a dozen eggs will pale in comparison in color and nutrient density. In fact, what I usually like to do is keep a dozen or so of those eggs on hand whenever I'm baking, reserving my better tasting and higher quality eggs for dishes where they're going to be front and center, like this omelet. These are the 𝗏𝗏 Farms pasture-raised eggs. You have my word, these are worth every penny. The next step requires that you beat the eggs, which you can do by hand or simply toss them in a blender. Either way, beat them until they're a uniform golden yellow in color. Since we're on the subject of eggs, let's talk about scrambled eggs for a minute. Scrambled eggs are one of the easiest and most purely keto foods you can make. Unfortunately, a lot of people do make the mistake of overcooking them. When making scrambled eggs, you want to make sure that you melt the butter over low heat. And once your eggs are beaten, you're going to cook them over that same low heat, seasoned with little more than sea salt, pepper, and if you'd like, a little Parmesan cheese. And if you have it on hand, a splash of heavy cream doesn't hurt either. When cooking scrambled eggs over low heat, you're purposely avoiding drying them out. So if they look a little glossy when they're done, that's okay, because that's going to give you more flavorful eggs. And by not overdoing it with the seasoning and using high quality eggs, you'll be able to enjoy the actual flavor of egg, which is often overpowered in cooking. As soon as your eggs are fully beaten, the next step is to set a little bit aside. This will come in handy when you actually start cooking the omelet. The idea being that you can use the extra egg yolk to patch up any holes that form when shaping the omelet. Next, add your protein of choice to the egg. As far as quantity, I just went with what felt right, which in this case was a couple generous handfuls of shrimp. Chives would have made a nice addition here too, and maybe some fresh dill if you happen to have some on hand. With the protein out of the way, season to taste with sea salt and mix until that salt is thoroughly dissolved throughout the egg. I often taste test to decide if I need more or less salt, but for the record, I don't condone eating raw egg. But yes, I do it all the time. That's why I eat only the really good ones. The final step before we start cooking this omelet is to add a nice tablespoon of coconut flour. I love cooking with coconut flour, especially as opposed to almond flour. Almond flour might as well be powdered bricks the way it sits in my stomach and weighs me down. Coconut flour, on the other hand, is super light and a little bit goes a tremendously long way. And best of all, it really tastes nothing like coconut. I use it in several of my most famous dishes, notably my soft and chewy chocolate chip cookies and my crab cakes, neither of which have the smallest hints of coconut flour. Once you're satisfied with the way everything tastes, it's time to get it in the fryer. Carefully pour it directly into the boiling oil. It should only be somewhere between low and medium heat, and ensure that the protein goes directly in the middle of the omelet. As you can see, it's going to spread out all over the place, almost like funnel cake. But that's exactly what you're looking for, so don't worry. At this point, it's important that you give it at least a minute to firm enough that you can fold the sides without breaking the egg apart. While this cooks, now's a good time to talk a little bit about the oil that I use and the oil that you should use. When it comes to oils, not all are created equally. The recipe that I found online for this dish, for example, calls for soybean oil. Soybean oil comes with a host of problems, the likes of which would take up the rest of my playtime to get into. Other equally unhealthy oils include vegetable and canola oil. Each of these are considered highly inflammatory and should be avoided at all costs. So what oils are best for frying? I recommend avocado oil, lard or tallow, ghee, or even coconut oil. Of the bunch, avocado oil is the most neutral, and I absolutely love the stuff. It's pricier, but its neutral flavor and healthy fats make it 100% worth it. Now, back to the omelet for a moment. As you can see, I'm folding it over like you would with a traditional omelet. After just over a minute of cooking, this was pretty easy to do. And once you get that initial fold, you're really gonna spend the next few minutes slowly turning it over again and again while gently applying pressure on all sides. In other words, your omelet is going to be doing a barrel roll throughout the rest of the cooking process. Now back to oils. Two often overlooked and highly useful oils are lard and tallow, both of which are all natural animal byproducts that come from pigs and cows respectively. And unlike avocado, you can usually find these for a really good price, as they're often ignored in favor of more mainstream fats. Like the coconut, their flavor is largely neutral. And because they have a high smoke point, they're ideal for frying. Arguably the best oil for this particular recipe would be ghee, essentially a clarified butter. Ghee adds an undeniable decadence to any dish, although it is the most expensive oils of the bunch. Now, as you can see here, I'm using the egg yolk that we set aside earlier to patch up some holes where the shrimp was exposed. I did this throughout the cooking process, and I was really impressed by how easily and effectively it did the job. The last oil that I can recommend for frying is coconut oil. Unlike the oils mentioned, it doesn't have as neutral a flavor. But if you ask any of its rabid fan base, it may or may not have magical abilities. All jokes aside, I really am a huge fan of coconut oil, just not necessarily in my cooking. For instance, I like to use it as a moisturizer for something called pulling, where you essentially use it as mouthwash to clean your teeth. I've even used it as a moisturizer in my hair to completely help rid me of dandruff. Back to the cooking at hand. It's been about 4 minutes since we put the eggs in the fryer. As you can see, with a little hands-on work, it's shaping up quite nicely. Throughout the omelet's cook time, I also basted it in the cooking oil to help evenly distribute the heat. The beauty of this recipe, for me at least, is that whichever oil you choose, this omelet is going to behave like a sponge and absorb a lot of it, making it a wonderful way to get in your fats without feeling forced. And cooking-wise, it's going to create this lovely crisp outer shell that does a beautiful job protecting the inside of the omelet, which after 7 to 8 minutes in this dish at least, came out soft and beautifully cooked. After 8 minutes, or when your omelet is golden brown on all sides, use 2 spatulas to carefully remove the omelet from the frying pan. And remember, your oil is reusable. Simply strain it, label what it was used for, and set aside for use on a later date. Voila! Thai deep fried shrimp stuffed keto approved omelet. Note how easy this was to make and how beautiful those results are. This dish is perfect on its own, but if you're hosting brunch, it's also the perfect party food. I'm picturing, say, 2 or 3 different types of omelets cut into finger food portions and displayed on a large plate, similar to how cold cuts are displayed for catering events. Tell me that doesn't sound fantastic. After all, no one has to know how easy this was to prepare. All they need to know is that you're an excellent cook and that keto is anything but lacking in flavor. For the final garnish on my omelet, I used a little bit of fresh parsley, and then I promptly stuffed my face. I did eat this all, and it did end up filling me up for the rest of the day. Thank you for watching Keto Crush. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. If you're not already subscribed, what are you waiting for? Crush that subscribe button so I can keep the keto content coming week after week. If you are subscribed, share my video with a friend. I want everyone to know how easy it is to cook rich and delicious food without the carbs. Is there anything you'd like to see on Keto Crush? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll do my very best to feature it as soon as possible. Keto Crush. Eat healthy, feel great, look hot. I'm gonna have to make myself another one.